Morning, ladies and gentlemen. So as you guys are coming in, if you want to get a head start on your notes, we are literally just wrapping up the first 10, 15 minutes of class, wrapping up yesterday's lesson on Alexander Hamilton, the National Bank, and his financial plan. So let's copy this one last slide down to your notes. So you're adding to your notes from yesterday. We'll wait for some more people to get in, and then we'll get started. Can we go over question 4 from yesterday's assignment? Yes, absolutely. Let's do that. All right, so while you're copying this down, I'm just going to pull up question 4. No rush for you guys. So let's go to the Google Classroom. I think question 4 was the one on the groups. All right, so question 4 was, what are the 3 groups of people who might oppose this plan? Explain their reasoning. Anicia, could you put in just the chat the groups that you got? Because I assume you got at least 1 or 2. And I can tell you what the last group is. Farmers, strict constructionalists, and the anti-federalists. Okay. Farmers, yes. Anti-federalists, yes. Strict constructionalists, yes. I'm good with all those answers. The group that you may want to also infer with is the Southerners. Southerners would be maybe more against the financial plan because of the tariffs. And tariffs generally will hurt the tariffs will help Northerners because there's more manufacturing and industry than the South. So you can maybe say the Southerners instead of the farmers, but that's fine. Those answers are perfectly fine. Yeah, 4 was a little bit of a tough question. It wasn't, to me, important enough. I think I said this to some students yesterday. It wasn't important enough for me to really, have you stress over it. Southerners and Democratic Republicans are the anti-federalists. Yeah, that's fine. Southerners and Democratic Republicans, okay, pretty much the people opposite of, yeah, all right, it's fine. Anyone that only came up with 2, it's fine. You didn't lose points. It wasn't an important enough of a question for me to really be upset if you didn't get it. All right. So looks like we're okay to start. So before we get into the DBQ and first and foremost, don't be stressed out about the DBQ. The DBQ generally is pretty easy. So we'll go over it, break it down step by step. I do want to mention today that you'll have a separate playlist on YouTube. I think it would be an important one because we're going to write a couple of essays this year, as you know. So definitely make sure you have the YouTube playlist kind of saved or favored or close by because when we go over these, when we write another DBQ or we do another thematic essay, it's going to be a lot of the same things that you're going to have to do. All right. But let's finish up yesterday's lesson, okay? Our Constitution really comes into its first issue early on in our country, okay, right around the first year we're in the Constitution, because when Alexander Hamilton writes his financial plan and mentions the National Bank, you go to the Constitution, there's nothing in the Constitution with the National Bank. So this is a reminder, okay? Anything not written in the Constitution is reserved for the states to decide. So essentially, technically speaking, by the Constitution, we're supposed to have 13 state banks, not a national bank. All right, but Alexander Hamilton says it makes no sense for the states to try and have their own banks and try and run the country's economy where we need one country kind of working together with this. So this is the first time in American history where the elastic clause, AKA the necessary and proper clause, AKA the implied powers. I'm sorry, it comes with 3 names. Usually it's the elastic clause, but we want to make sure we go through that. And if you did the assignment yesterday, you noticed in the interview, Alexander Hamilton pointed to the necessary and proper clause, right, which is just the same thing as the elastic clause. And he said that this is one of those opportunities where the Constitution has to be flexible, and we need to add a national bank so the federal government can take the lead in America's economy. How are we going to basically have a federal economy run by our federal government, but no national bank? Right, that was his big argument. And he talked about the pros and the cons with it. Now, you need to understand the opposite side of it. Thomas Jefferson, which is located on the right here, we're going to see a little bit of a video. He's very much against this. Number one, he's a strict constructionist, meaning he is someone who believes what is written in the Constitution is what you can do. Now, you'll see how that kind of changes a little bit later on in this country. But for now, he's a strict constructionist. And whatever's written in the Constitution is what the federal government could do. He's the father of Declaration of Independence. This guy does not want a strong federal government. He doesn't want the federal government to gain more power. So there's a pretty famous cabinet meeting that takes place early on in 1790. We're going to have the Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, there sitting with the Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson. George Washington's going to be there. And in this cabinet meeting, him and his vice president, John Adams, are going to listen to a very famous exchange where Hamilton and Jefferson, like, respectfully, but, like, couldn't agree on anything. All right? And you're going to kind of see how this breaks down and how our country tries to go through establishing if a national bank, and this is the first time I'm going to use this word with you, if a national bank is constitutional. Because Thomas Jefferson says it isn't. Alexander Hamilton says it is. So let's look at the exchange, and we'll see kind of the reasons as it goes through here. So I'm going to share this. Look at the chat so you know who's who, because they're actors portraying these people. The first person you're going to see on your screen, the person that it's looking to right now, is Thomas Jefferson. All right, you'll notice John Adams, and you'll notice Alexander Hamilton as well. So look at the chat so you know who's who. All right, but Jefferson's the one speaking to start.
It's no surprise to me. That's why I abhor them. But I've been, as you know, in revolutionary France, where the streets are filled with the songs of liberty and brotherhood and the overthrow of ancient tyrannies of Europe, and to return from there to this, our cradle of revolution, and find the dinner table chatter is all of money and banks and authority is an unwelcome surprise.
Unwelcome, perhaps, but necessary.
I must admit, Mr. Hamilton, I'm a little uncertain as to the purpose of the Treasury Department. No doubt its function will reveal itself to me in good time.
The future prosperity of this nation rests chiefly in trade. Trade depends, among other things, on the willingness of other nations to lend us money.
And how would you propose to establish international credit?
Our first step would be to incur a national debt. The greater the debt, the greater the credit. And to that end, I have recommended to the President that Congress adopt all the debts incurred by the individual states during the war through a national bank. The idea being that if the states owe Congress money, then other nations will feel more inclined to lend it to us.
If the states are indebted to a central authority, it increases the power of the central government.
There you have it, exactly. The greater the government's responsibility, the greater its authority.
All right, so you're really seeing this whole debate now kind of play out. So our country, despite 2020, and we've had some huge disagreements. If you're following politics, our country is divided among political lines, but we kind of always have been. But you see the rapport that they have, it's a lot more respectful, but you could see that they honestly completely disagree with everything Hamilton and Jefferson are saying. And Adams is the guy kind of looking around like, this isn't good. They don't agree on anything. Jefferson basically is saying that the federal government is too strong already. If we give a national bank, we're going to become even stronger, and that's the last thing he wants. And Hamilton's like, yeah, we need the federal government to be stronger. We need a national bank. they don't like each other very much, or no. That is for sure. And if you have time, okay, I think I mentioned this yesterday. If you guys have Disney Plus, if you have an opportunity to see Hamilton, you will see how little Jefferson and Hamilton get along. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't very important in kind of working together, because they're getting both sides of it here. Now, Jefferson's coming from the South. He's going to give the South's perspective. He's going to say, look, the greater the debt, the more money that is owed is in the North. You're going to combine all of the country's debt. That's going to crush the South. That's not fair. So see how the exchange plays out. We're almost done.
The moneyed interest in this country is all in the North, so the wealth and power would inevitably be concentrated there in the federal government, to the expense of the South.
If that is the case, it is unavoidable if the Union is to be preserved.
I fear our revolution will have been in vain if a Virginia farmer is to be held in hock to a New York stock jobber, who in turn is in hock to a London banker. The opportunities for avarice and corruption would certainly prove irresistible.
Well, there you have it, as I have heard said. If men were angels, then no government would be necessary.
Well, sadly, that is very well said. But there can be no question, our nation cannot bind together without powerful central government. But we must also accommodate the needs of our constituent states, both North and South. The power of one must check and balance the other. And to that end, we must dedicate all of our energies and our care.
All right, so we don't really need to see what George Washington has to say at this point, but essentially, Adams understands that there's huge disagreements between both Jefferson and Hamilton, between the federal Democratic Republicans and the Federalists. We saw this in the political parties video. Okay, we saw that in that lesson. Hopefully you watched the lesson. I know some people didn't. But ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, Jefferson and Hamilton are going to disagree. But essentially speaking, Hamilton's going to win out, okay, and win the argument. And eventually, using the elastic clause, I'm going back to this here. Sorry. Okay. Eventually, when we do go back to the elastic clause, we're going to say, okay, the elastic clause does grant us the power to have a national bank. And if you notice here, the first one's going to be put into place February 23rd, 1791 in Philadelphia. So the elastic clause was used to create a national bank. And if you look at every aspect of Hamilton's financial plan, okay, if you look at the tariffs, if you look at the national bank, if you look at the one currency, he actually did a really good job bringing our economy out of debt and into a strong economy relatively early on in our country. All right. So as a particular student, all right, Hamilton was successful, but you saw that in our government, the checks and balances, making sure that everyone's held accountable is really important. All right, we're going to finish today this part of our lesson with 3 Regents questions as per usual. Let's just write them in the chat. I think the first one's pretty straightforward. All right, Alexander Hamilton's argument that government has the power to create a national bank is going to be correct. It's going to be 2. Use the elastic clause to get what he wants. Okay? And I think he had the right reading on it. I think it was an oversight not putting a national bank in our government, in our Constitution. So the elastic clause is used. So now obviously we have national banks working with the country. Okay? The next thing, sorry. This is a little bit of a tough question. All right? So take your time with it. Most tariffs in the 19th century were intended to what? So why do we put a tariff on? It's not just to be mean to put an extra tax on imported goods. What is the reason why? Excellent. Really nicely done, guys. Okay, so raise revenue. We're trying to build up the money our country brings in. That is the tariff money tax part. But we also want to protect domestic manufacturing. For those that don't know what domestic means. It kind of helped you out, but domestic means at home. Foreign means not in this country. Or I'll just say in another country. All right, so those are two terms you'll see a lot, domestic and foreign. So domestically, this helps us, our manufacturers, because now the people that make the products in the country are going to have more things bought from their consumers. All right, and the last one major reason that Hamilton proposed a national bank was to what? There's two answers here that if you choose one of them, I'm not going to be so upset with. But there is one definitely a lot better than the other. Yeah, one is the best answer. Excellent. We want to improve our economic position in the country. We want to make sure that the United States has a stronger economy, and the national bank was to do that so we could have a stronger economy and stronger capitalist economy. The only other answer I maybe would have been okay with was 3. They want to make loans available to owners of small farms. That is one of the things they do, but it's not a major thing that they do. And to be honest, the national bank's purpose is not just specifically to make loans available to small farmers. So 1 is the best answer. Okay. I think one of you guys said 2. It could have possibly been 2. To help the state governments collect taxes, that's actually not a role the national government has. If you're looking at federalism, the federalist system, our national government does not have the power to help the state government collect taxes. That's only the state governments are allowed to do that. All right, so nicely done. All right, so now we're going to transition into our first DBQ essay. You will not work on the essay today because the DBQ has consisting of 2 parts. You have the DBQ short answer questions and the DBQ essay. Now, I think it's unanimously always said that the DBQ short answer questions are the easiest part of social studies, okay? And if you read it over, it can be very confusing, but once you know what to do and know what you're looking for, it's very hard to get the question wrong. And I'll prove it to you as we go through the assignment, okay? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna share my window instead because I think it's important for you to see how I navigate through everything. All right, so let's stop sharing tabs. Let's just share the window. Give me a second to do this. All right, you guys can go to the Google Classroom. You can better see what I'm talking about. Let's see how it looks. Looks good to me. Okay, so there's basically 2 things we're working on today. All right, the other 2 things will be worked on tomorrow and then like half of the class Friday. You're pretty much going to have the next 2.5 periods to work on this essay and this assignment. I think there's a good chunk of you that will finish the entire assignment and won't have an essay or anything due for homework. But if you don't finish, you will have the rest of the weekend to complete it. All right, so the 2 things we're working on today is first and foremost the document. All right, so that is on the top left, so click on that. All right, it looks like this. All right. The next thing that you should maybe have also open is this screenshot because we're going to go through the notes on how to do a DBQ Part A short answer question. All right, and again, I think once you get used to it, you'll see it's one of the easier things you'll do in my class if you have a little bit of faith. Okay. So let's just first start. Every DBQ you get is going to come with a topic or historical context. So let's just get a little idea of what this topic's going to be about. And if you're looking at the titles, you probably already got a sense. But every DBQ is going to come with 3 topics, okay? And those 3 topics are going to come with primary source readings, pictures, or photographs. For those that don't remember from 7th grade, primary sources are a reading or a source that was around at the time, okay, was around at the time of the historical event. So some of these are very tough to read. But don't worry about the difficulty of how hard it is to read as opposed to how easy it is to find the answer. And you'll see what I mean. So here's the historical context. I'm just going to read it to you. Throughout United States history, individuals have used written works as a way to focus attention on issues facing American society. These written works have had significant influence on the United States and American society. Okay? So we're going to look at famous American books that have transformed society. All right? These written works include Common Sense by Thomas Paine, and then the 2 I crossed out, Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe, and The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. So we're not working on these two particular works of literature because we haven't gotten to them yet. Okay? What you'll have to do when you do a DBQ essay is essentially you're going to have to pick two of these three. All right? And then write an essay about them, and I'll show you how to do that. But for this lesson, we're going to do half of an essay. Now, half of an essay meaning it's not going to be 2 paragraphs out of 4. It's still going to be a 4-paragraph essay, but we're just going to have less writing in each paragraph. Okay, and I'll show you how we do that. All right, so we're going to focus in on Common Sense, the book, all right, by Thomas Paine. All right, so now let's go into the DBQ documents. Now, when you take the DBQ document essay in June, there's going to be 9 documents total, 9 short answer questions, basically. We have now 3. Document 1, document 2, document 3. That's all we're doing today. We're not even going to start the essay today. We're going to start the essay tomorrow. So all our focus is how do we do these particular DBQ documents? All right, that's it. So let's go through it, okay? You need to separate ELA, writing, short answer questions, and essays, and separate social studies, short answer questions, and writing, okay? If you answer a DBQ short answer question like you're in ELA, you're going to waste so much time, and it's not worth it, so to speak. So in the chat, remind me what you guys have in social studies. Okay, so let's just stop. Milagros and Madison are confused. All right, so Milagros, unmute yourself and just explain what you're confused with so far. Okay, I love when students say that, everything. Okay, so let's go back. So we are going to write an essay, okay? Before we write an essay, you have to do the readings, all right? Just like you would in ELA, right? You've taken the ELA Common Core test, I'm sure, right? You get a reading, and then you write an essay. Is there anything confusing about that? Okay. In our class, we are going to get a reading, and we're going to write an essay. Nothing's changed. We just don't call it a perspective essay or a narrative writing essay or whatever the hell you guys do in ELA. Whatever essay we do, we call it a DBQ essay. DBQ stands for document-based questions. So we're going to get a document, and then eventually after we go through the documents, we're going to write an essay. Now, just like you would in ELA, right? Sometimes you get a short reading, and then you have a short answer question, right? Same thing in social studies now. All right, we're going to get our short answer questions and then the essay. For today, we're just focusing on the short answer questions. Thursday and Friday, we'll focus in on the essay. So we're just breaking it down piece by piece. The topic of the essay and the topic of the short answer question right now are books in American history. Specifically, we're looking at common sense. All right? So hopefully I've clarified just you're doing, this is like, I hate this because I'm basically being an ELA teacher, which I hate. I don't like ELA. It's not my subject, let's be honest. All right, there's subjects I like a lot more, but I have to obviously teach this in an ELA sort of way. But you need to separate the two classes. ELA and social studies are 2 different classes in terms of how you write your essays and in terms of how you do your short answer. So in the chat right now, please remind me what short answer protocol you guys have when you need to answer something. There's been like 3 or 4 I've seen, and my time is PS89. So which one do you guys have now? Is it ACES? Is it, oh, ACES is. Excellent, perfect. Okay, so ACES is usually what, 4 or 5 sentences to answer a short answer question? You will never write more than 1 sentence when answering a short answer question in my class, okay? You are going to answer not through ACES, you're gonna answer through RQ. It's going to be restate and quote. All right, I'll show you what I mean. Since this is a time test, you're not gonna spend a whole lot of time going through the actual evidence and quotes and elaborations because you don't have the time to do it. when you do a DBQ document and when you get graded either a 0 if you got it wrong or a 1 if you got it right. It doesn't matter if you wrote it in 1 sentence or 40 sentences. If you get one of the quotes correct, that's all you need. You're getting 1 point. Okay? And usually speaking, generally speaking, if there's 9 documents, a majority of the class get all 9 right. Because you'll see how easy it is to pick the correct quote because there's usually multiple correct answers. All right, when I mean multiple, I'm talking like more than 10. All right, so it generally is a very easy situation. Now, when the Regents test was put into place, the DBQ was put in for students that did nothing all year, but gave them an opportunity to still pass the test. And that's just the truth. You cannot know a thing about social studies. You could fall asleep for 9 months, not learn one thing, and still write a good DBQ essay. Now, if you are someone who pays attention and follows the protocol and knows a lot of social studies, well, now we're going to be writing an excellent DBQ essay. All right, the DBQ's essay is supposed to help bring your grade up. All right, so that's why I always find it to be an easy thing. So it's intimidating at first, but it's really not too difficult to do. So we need to now approach this from a social studies perspective. Here are your tips for answering the DBQ documents. First things first, you want to read the question first. Okay? Know what you're looking for. If there is an opportunity for you not to do the entire reading, you actually could stop and not finish the reading. If you get your answer, you can stop. All right? So you want to essentially restate the question and to provide one detail by either paraphrasing or quoting from the text. 99% of the time, you're going to be quoting from the text. The other 1%, there won't be a quote from the text because you're looking at a map or a picture. All right? But if you see a text, you should be quoting most of the time, if not all the time. All right? So let's really break down what this looks like. Okay? So this is how I approach a DBQ document. So I'm going to model how I do it. We're going to do the first one together. All right? And if you noticed, we're going to go to document 1. Now, the first thing I do is I read the question, and you'll see what I do after I read the question. So according to Arthur M. Schlesinger, what were 2 events that motivated Thomas Paine to write Common Sense? So before I even look at the reading, I'm just going to restate the questions. All right, so I'm going to go 1 event. You guys know what restating the question is, right? I mean, that's like not 8th grade stuff. That's less than 8th grade. 1 event that motivated Thomas Paine to write Common Sense was, I'm just going to leave it there because I don't know that right now. And then I'll set up the next one. Another event. Now, very rarely you have to answer 2 reasons. Usually it's just 1, but this one they're asking for 2. Another event that motivated Thomas Paine to write Common Sense was. I'm setting up the restate, so I've already done half of what I need to do. Now, here's the truth of the matter. Some of you will not even have to read this to answer that question. Thomas Paine wrote a book about something. Hopefully you remember what it was. If you remember what that something was about, could you think of 2 reasons maybe why we went to that particular event? Why we went to that war? Could you maybe remember off the top of your head? I can think of about 10, but I'm a teacher, so that's kind of my thing. All right? So if you can't remember, you're going to do the reading. Now we're going to pretend, for this sake, that no one remembers anything about Common Sense, or this is the first time you've seen the topic. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to read. And the second you see a quote that answers the question, an event that motivated Thomas Paine, please spam the chat and tell me to stop reading. All right? Otherwise, I'll just read the whole thing if you don't see anything. All right? But I think I've counted there's 6 quotes that would be acceptable to answer that question. All right? So we know we're looking at an event that inspired or motivated Thomas Paine to write Common Sense. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to read. I'm going to look at the chat when you guys tell me to stop. So this is John Dickinson of Pennsylvania, argued for a new colonial theory which limited the Parliament of power over the colonies and said this: Then events in due course pushed the colonial theory of limited parliamentary power to a final stage. Thomas Paine's Common Sense, appearing in January 1776, tore every shred of authority from both king and parliament. The 2 years or so preceding or coming before had piled crisis upon crisis. Number one, the Bostons had sunk the tea. Parliament had retorted with the Intolerable Acts. The First Continental Congress had instituted a program of intercolonial economic resistance. War had erupted on Lexington Green, and an American army under the Second Congress had shut up or surrounded General Gage and his regulars in Boston. In stirring and violent rhetoric, the English-born Paine, who had recently settled in Philadelphia with a heart full of rancor for his native land, addressed his emotions to well and parts of mind of the readers. So was there anything from the first half of this that would maybe answer what event motivated Thomas Paine to write Common Sense? Were there any events that came up here? All right, so a bunch of stops. Okay, the Intolerable Act part I saw. Okay, good. All right, so that's the first one I'm seeing, the Intolerable Act part. So correct. So Parliament had retorted with the Intolerable Acts. Now, for those that don't know, those were laws that were passed on people in the colonies to basically treat them more like children and take away some of their rights and freedoms. If you don't remember that, that's fine. All we need to do is put the quote. So I'm literally going to put one event that motivated Thomas Paine to write Common Sense was, and here I go. Quote, Parliament had retorted with the Intolerable Acts. Do you need to know what retorted means? Does it? No. Does it help? Yes. But you just need to put the quote to get credit. All right? That is one correct answer. All right? What was another event that motivated Thomas Paine to write Common Sense based off of what we read? Look back to the text. What was another event that happened that would have upset the colonists? Nevaeh, excellent. They had sunk the tea. All right? The Boston Tea Party, right? So another event that motivated Thomas Paine to write Common Sense was the Bostonians sunk the tea. All right? That's it. That's all you need to do. I know your ELA teacher, Miss Sharetta, if she saw this, okay, we'll keep this our little secret. If she saw this, would be yelling and screaming right now because, no, you have to provide evidence and you have to, support and you have to, make sure that you explain your reasoning, right? No, you don't do that here. You will do that in the essay. You don't need to waste your time and do it twice. Remember, we're on a time test when we take this. You don't want to be wasting any valuable time. So I guarantee if you just wrote this, put your periods because we are educated young men and women, because I did not. If we put this, I guarantee you will get a point for each. You'll get 1 point for this and then 1 point for this. All right, and I'll prove it to you. I'm going to show you the answer key. All right? The answer key, if you're looking right here, when your grader gets this, you have to pick some of these things. So we said one of our quotes was the Bostonians sinking the tea / the Boston Tea Party. You got a point. You needed another one. The other one we said was Parliament passed the Intolerable Acts. 2. We're good. Now, as you can tell, there was a third one, a fourth quote, and a fifth quote for the answer. Now, to be honest, this is not a lot of choices. Usually when you see an answer key and you see a reading, it will look more like this. Now there's like 12 to 13 choices. All right? So you're going to take the rest of class, okay? You're going to take the rest of class to do now documents 2 and 3. All right, very similar thing. Right when you start with the first question, don't read it yet. Okay, don't read the main text. Just look at the question. Say, okay, I need to restate the question, and then look at the text. All right? If you see the text, the answer in the text, in the first 3 lines, stop reading it. Put the answer, move on. All right? I know I'm giving you the opposite of what you've been taught in ELA, I'm sorry, but you need to differentiate the two classes. All right, I don't need you wasting your time. I don't need you doing this because the essay is the more important part. All right, so you do document 2, you do document 3. All right, if you want me to check your answers, then just throw in the chat and then I can maybe let you know if you're correct. All right, or share your screen and I can let you know if you're correct because I have the answer key. All right, once you finish those, let me know. All right, and then I'll tell you what's next. I got to take attendance now, so I'll be muted. And now, if at any point you're stuck, okay, you know, when you're in a time test, this will make more sense. But anytime you're stuck and you really don't know what the reading's saying, because this is a tough thing to read, I completely understand that because it's written in Old American English. If you have a problem, then you're going to restate and take a quote that you think sounds best, even if it's not 100% correct, because you could still get full credit for it. All right, so look at what the question's asking and see if the response would answer that question. So you can always take a random quote. Now, no one should be doing that now because you have plenty of time to do this, but when you have a time test, it is completely okay to do that.